Hi, Linda.
Hi, sweetie. So nice to be here.
Oh, it's so nice to see you, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it's been at least 6 months, and it was a serendipitous interaction by
Yeah.
going to one of those happy women dinners.
Yes, yes, yes.
And how awesome was it that I got to meet you
So
and
fun.
Kelly Gore? And I literally saw the what who was going to be speaking, and I was
Yeah.
like, I can't not come.
Oh, thank you so much. That was really fun.
It was fun. It was a great group of women.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a very, I'm going to use the word which actually describes you really well. Like it was a very open event
Oh,
in the
nice.
way that people were openly sharing
Yeah.
their concerns or their fears around
Yeah.
writing a book and
Yeah.
releasing a book and publishing a book, but
Yeah.
also open in terms of how you received people's information and feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My sister is a Vedic astrologer,
Mm.
and she was telling me the other day I have some very flexible combination of planets. She's like, "You're so flexible." I just love being able to see, I can kind of see and feel everybody's deal.
Mm.
I don't know how to
Well,
explain it,
I
but
do
I love
believe that that must have been the reason why we attracted one another.
it. Yeah.
And I remember that you saw me. And
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
do you remember this? So let me share with you because it
Yeah.
really it as I shared with you before we got on the podcast, that I had been looking for somebody to guide me through the process of
Yeah.
publishing my own book and
Right.
writing my own book. And honestly, when I connected with you that night, I was in line to actually get my book signed by you, your
Yeah.
beautiful writer's book.
Yeah.
And you looked at me and you said, "You see."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Wow." And I literally said, "Wow, you see me."
Yeah.
And you said, "Yeah, oh, you have a book in you." And
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I've had a book in me for a while. I just haven't written it. And I've been looking for somebody, and I think it's you."
That's so bizarre. That's so
Yeah.
bizarre. I very rarely say that to people. Like that is not a line. That sounds like kind of like the equivalent of a pickup line at a bar. I see you, buy my
Exactly.
book, come to my programs. But
Exactly.
I don't say that shit.
That's
I
so
don't say it.
funny. That's
Yeah.
so funny. Well, like I have to say that I felt seen, right? And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, okay, this is cool. This was the connection I was looking for, and it was meant to be.
That's so
And
nice.
I feel like a karmic connection or something where you're meant to guide me, not just to provide your wisdom. It's something about my story, which obviously you and I have our meeting coming up, that
Yeah.
you're going to help guide me in my life. I really have felt this.
That's wild. Thank you. Years ago, I used to work with a medicine man
Mm,
in New Mexico. He sold me some land,
mm,
and his wife was a yogini. So they were like total East meets West.
right.
And she would tell me that people would dream about her. And it was always surprising to her because she didn't know the people.
Yeah,
But they'd
interesting.
like show up at the land for a feast way or for a sweat lodge or something. And they didn't dream about the medicine man. They were dreaming about this woman.
Interesting.
And I just thought that was the weirdest thing in the world. Well, people tell me that sometimes, and I'm sure that's the case for anybody who's in a position where they're teaching something.
Yeah.
Uh, what do they say?
Or
Like
working
if
in
this,
energy.
yeah, what do they say if the student is ready, the teacher appears? But it is so bizarre when people say that to me, like I had a sign, or I had a vision, or I had a dream. I meant to learn from you, and I never take it as an ego thing.
Never.
To me, it's just like you said, it's just energetic. And I learn as much from my people as they learn from me. I mean, no doubt. I learn a lot from everybody that I work with. So I think it's a win-win.
Well, and I agree. And I think that I love when the line that you just said is that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
And I believe that I believe in that so much that the signs lead us and guide us toward the right people to support us in
Yeah.
whatever venture that is. And if you're open.
Oh, yeah, I think that is key.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to miss, right? I just started the other day re-asking my dreams for guidance.
I
I
love
used
that.
to do that a lot. And I mean, one of the storylines in Beautiful Writers is about how I would ask my dreams and I would get these insanely accurate answers. And when I follow it, life is a lot more magical.
Of course.
But it's easy to forget that stuff, or it's easy to get too busy and to not do it. And I'm not a big dreamer, actually. I don't usually remember my dreams upon waking. When I remember my dreams, they're usually incredibly prophetic.
Mm,
So because I'm not a big active dreamer, at least I'm not remembering my dreams. When I have them and they tell me what to do, I go, oh, yes, ma'am. I just
yeah.
follow.
Where
But
when you wrote Beautiful Writers,
yeah,
were your dreams more prophetic?
you mean when I was in the writing
Yes,
process?
you're in the
Yes.
writing process. Yeah.
Yeah, I think anytime I'm doing any kind of a creative project, that veil is you're more open. You're more open to guidance.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening, even if you're not aware that you're listening. And I like to write early in the morning. I
Mm-hmm.
had that first dream about the first book that I ever wrote was called Lives Charmed, and that was given to me in a dream at 3 a.m. And so I definitely, when I'm actively writing a book, I like to wake up really early because I feel like I can hear. I can hear
Mm-hmm.
better. The veils are thinner.
It's so interesting that you're using the word veil
Yeah.
because just before coming here, I do a meditative process called Chow Do, which is a meditative tea ceremony. And the guidance to your point about, so sometimes, as we know, meditations can be like prophetic dreams.
Right.
And I asked for the veil to be lifted. And
Interesting.
yeah, it's again this energy that keeps
Hmm.
being woven between us.
Right.
But that is what true interaction is, right? Is allowing ourselves to be open to weave within one another.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I've never thought of it that way, but I think you're right. 100%.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, anyways, what I want to do is have you take our audience through your impressive background, but also I want to hear why you got into writing because you explained to me that there was never a writer within you before. And clearly now you are a best-selling author multiple times over, and you have also helped many people
Yeah.
get published.
Yeah.
And you have these retreats and you
Yeah.
have a podcast. So, I mean, we could go on and on and on. But one of the things I actually really like to do when I like to watch you and your horses.
Oh, that's my favorite thing to do is to be with my horses. They're amazing.
It's
I was
your
never a
dog.
horse person. I'm a dog freak. We have 7 dogs. I was a dog walker in Beverly Hills and Hollywood, which is how my writing started because I had a dream I was supposed to interview my clients. And I had incredible clients to interview. They were like some of the most magical people. Um, but so my husband wanted to get
How long ago
horses.
was that?
What, the dog walking?
That you lived in LA?
Oh, I've always lived in LA. I'm only here. I mean, I was raised in Northern California, but I went to USC, so I
Oh,
lived
I
in
didn't know
LA
that.
for
I'm a Trojan too.
35 years.
Right on.
I don't.
Who knew? I didn't know that. See?
Yeah, my husband played football for USC. Yeah, we're a big Trojan family. Yeah.
Right on. I
We had
love
a
that.
dog named Troji. She passed away last year.
Mm,
But yeah, no, I'm a total LA girl forever and ever, just complete. And we left LA because of the fire evacuations, because of the horses. So
wow.
we got horses in like 2009, maybe 2010. And as the weather got drier and drier in LA and the drought got worse and worse, the Santa Ana's just brought the fires right next to our door too often. And it was frightening. So we're like, I suppose you could call us climate refugees. We literally put the horses in the trailers and hauled out to get to Scottsdale.
Wow. That's
So we're
amazing.
still in nature. We're like near Tonto National Forest, and it's
Yeah.
heavenly. And we just don't have the same danger here.
Mm. So when you, because I see you transport the horses all the time.
Yeah.
So are you driving the truck from place to place or?
Sometimes my husband's usually the one driving the truck. I don't know what it is about men. They never think I'm a good driver. I think I'm a really good driver, so whatever. But honestly,
You're
I don't
busy driving
mind.
other things.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind having somebody else do it because boy, is that a
Yeah,
responsibility.
I would say
Yeah.
it would make me very nervous.
Yeah. I can do it. I have done it. I prefer not to.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like
Yeah.
that. Well, you're utilizing your power in other ways,
Yeah.
for sure. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about your writing business. Like, how did it get started?
Oh my gosh. It was so haphazard and it was so surprising to me. I was the girl that quit college 3 classes shy. I never felt book smart ever. I was obsessed with books as a kid, always wanted to be a writer.
Mm.
Um, Really, I saw myself as a writer as a kid. I wrote children's books on my mom's Selectric. My parents' best friends were huge writers, like my dad's best friend, Charles Saylor, who I did an episode of the Beautiful Writers podcast with. It's one of my favorite episodes. We did it years ago, but he sold 6 million books of a title called The Second Son.
Mm.
It was a huge success. It's still in production, pre-production for a movie. We'll see. But I just didn't feel smart enough, honestly. I felt like because school was boring to me mostly. I loved school, but I loved the social interaction of school. I loved the companionship and the athleticism and right, that heart connection. But I just thought most of my classes were boring and I couldn't bother to go to them half the time. I was, just I really wasn't a great student. And so wanting to be an author when you don't feel like you're book smart is a really big jump. That was it felt impossible to me until I had a dream that told me 6 books I was supposed to write. Format, titles, how to do it. I saw the whole thing as if I
Wow,
was downloading a master class. So,
that's amazing.
today's today's version of a master class. And then the dream woke me up every single night at 3 a.m. for 6 months and continued to show me. So I literally just took dictation. It was that simple. I felt like I had just moved into an alternate universe. God was saying to me, here you go. I know you don't feel smart. I know that you have a lot of obstacles to this, but we're just going to make it as easy for you as possible. And I went, okay.
Wow.
And I followed every single step, and it was miraculous. And I worked my ass off because I
Well,
didn't feel smart enough. And you can have all sorts of dreams, but it's a whole other thing to be putting pen to the page and to have it look good enough for somebody else to review it who's in the industry. I mean, I was well aware that even though I always was told I was a good writer, that I wasn't schooled. And
mm,
so I call it my Linda University. I just bought books on editing and read them around the clock. I was incredibly driven. I loved it. I could feel myself get smarter and better at it every day. And like anybody with a big dream, as you start to have successes, little ones feed the enthusiasm and you just keep going. And then one day you look up and you've got a book. And the story of it, the ins and outs and the craziness are part of my memoir, Beautiful Writers. But so with the first book, it was called Lives Charmed. It was really successful in the media. The media was super supportive. And so that made a lot of people in my life say, okay, I've got this book. Can you get it to your agent? Can you get it to your publisher? Can you get it to Woody Harrelson? Can you get it to Kirk Douglas? I had a lot of famous clients
yep,
from the dog walking or
exactly.
people that I had interviewed for that first
Which
book.
goes to show you, you never know where something's leading you.
Thank you, right? I'm dog walking because I'm obsessed with dogs. I love exercise. That too was given to me in a vision. It worked out great. My business was amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But I couldn't help people because I would look at their first couple of pages and they were riddled with typos and their hook was on page 17. And I was like, I can't
Yes.
pass this on. It won't work.
Yes.
And they were like, okay, can you fix it? And suddenly I have a full-time editing job, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And then my clients started getting book deals and big ones. And then, I was forever busy.
Yeah. It's interesting when you describe that you would wake up every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Uh, this is very interesting because it kind of, when we talk, my question for you is, do you believe that you were being guided by
A
angels?
hundred percent.
Okay.
100%.
And that you just chose to listen. So you dug deeper into the curiosity and surrendered.
100%. I just went, oh, there must be a muse, and he or she has tapped me. And if I don't do this, this was very clear to me. If
Mm-hmm.
I don't answer, somebody else is going to.
Mm,
So I'm going to answer. And as I say in Beautiful Writers, I watched, as I was so busy with the first book, because there were six,
yes.
I watched other people come out with the other titles every single year.
Wow.
So
That is
those ideas were not just germane to me. They were out there.
wow, this is really powerful and a deep message because so many people don't listen. They hear the call, but they
Right.
don't pick
Right.
up and they don't listen.
Well, it's not easy to listen. You oftentimes you have to change something really radical. You have to change your worldview. You have to change your schedule. You have to change your lifestyle. I was very blessed in that I had a husband who was also a dreamer. So my husband was an actor. He was mostly home, but he made just enough for me to feel safe quitting my dog walking business.
Mhm.
And it was hard and it was scary. And we were like month to month a lot of the time. But to me, not answering the call would have been harder.
Mm. Yeah, I think that is always the impetus for change.
Yeah.
Is that it has to be a greater value
Yeah.
than the loss, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I or the risk of losing it. And I think the thing is that how beautiful is it that your husband supported you through that process and that
Yeah.
dream?
Yeah. He did. He was excited. Being an actor in LA is hard, and he was successful, but he was still a journeyman actor. And he wanted me to be successful. If I made more money, it would help the family. So he had a vested interest in my being successful. And he was very much a believer. He loved my writing. He always loved my writing. Now, keep in mind, like we had an intense divorce. He was also a cheater, and like shit didn't work out.
Mhm.
Um, but for whatever reason, back to what you were saying about how I saw you, he could see me
Mm,
in that part of my world. He couldn't see all of me for sure,
yes,
or he wouldn't have been a cheater, because that's not really nice thing
of
to do to
course.
somebody that you see, right?
Yes, exactly.
Although later on, years later, I did write our story. I haven't published it yet, but I did write our story and I gave it to him. He was
Mm,
already with the woman. No, his marriage had broken up with the one he
got you
cheated
with.
on me with. That had ended badly, and he was on to subsequent relationships. So I was terrified to show it to him, but I still showed it to him because I just wanted to be super transparent. I'm like, I'm probably at some point going to publish this. Do you want to read it? And he did, and he read it. And wow, I mean, he really saw me. He was like, I never ever knew your experience of our marriage. And it was amazing, very healing.
You know, what's really cool about what you're describing too, a lot of people talk about this, but like the way you're expressing it is understanding that like we all have a story to tell. I'm a firm believer in yes, you may not have all the credentials and all of that, but like we all have a book in us.
Oh gosh, yes.
And the way you're describing it is that it healed you
Oh my gosh, yes.
by allowing you to outwardly express this experience for you, which
Yeah.
wasn't all positive.
Oh my God. No, I think writing heals. There are studies that talk about how much writing your story heals the writer.
Mm,
And in my case, I was very blessed in that it helped heal other people as well.
mm,
That was a surprise to me, especially since he did not come off as a hero in the story, and that was okay with him. He actually told me to put more of the dark stuff in. He thought it'd
wow.
make a better story. He thought it would be more dramatic. He was like, go ahead. It's true. It happened." And I was like, "Wow,
Well,
that's
I and
great."
I love that it actually gave him permission to own his story too.
It did.
And that he was actually okay with like showing more of himself
Yeah.
because that actually shows growth too.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of growth in the whole process.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, it gives me a lot of hope because I have a lot of clients that often want to write a book, right? And so that's why I was like, let me enter into this with Linda because
Yeah,
she's my lady, and I know that as I go through this process, I'll be able to bring more people
for
to
sure.
the journey,
Yeah. Yeah,
give them
you'll be a
permission,
better teacher for them.
exactly, and give them
Yeah,
permission because I think, when I think about myself, I think about everybody, including myself, has big goals often, and we
sure.
stop ourselves. And
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer in having a partner. That's why I have been seeking. And I feel that that's one of your greatest gifts to people.
It's easy for me to care about somebody else's dreams, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because my parents cared so much about mine.
Mm.
My parents were the ultimate cheerleaders. I mean, redonkulous. They were so enthusiastic. My sister and I laugh about it to this day. If we said, "Oh, it'd be fun to paint a picture," we'd come home and dad would have an easel and watercolors and a whole thing of oil paint. We would have it all the next day. Like it didn't matter what we wanted to do. My parents wanted to give it to us. And so maybe that's why I'm the same. I'm just such a cheerleader for people, and it's so natural. And it's why I did just indefinitely pause my writing retreats. I have one left in February in Carmel, but I put a
Two
pause on
spots
them.
left.
Two spots left.
But we
Thank
need
you.
people to know this.
Oh, you're adorable. But I put a pause on them because I could more naturally cheerlead other people's dreams than my own for the rest of my life. I I I just love it so much. I love being behind the scenes. I love seeing I can see potential for people. I hear things for people, and I get so excited, and then I'm like, "Come on, let's do it." Like you know,
Yes.
and I actually have to stop myself
Mhm.
so that I can put a little bit more of that into me, into my creations. I mean, I don't as a rule even really promote the things that I've done. And I'm like, oh, I actually need to do a little bit more of that.
Have you ever felt that that you're set like depleted? That you haven't given enough to yourself? Are you really good with setting boundaries on your time?
I'm really good with setting boundaries. It's not coming from a depletion. It's that I get jazzed by helping people. It's fun for me. And so I think the depletion comes in thinking it's like a future fear. My mom, when she was on her deathbed, she said, "I wasted my life."
Mm,
And
wow,
she
that's
didn't.
painful.
She didn't waste her life. Like standing room only 350 people at her memorial, people I had never met weeping. I mean, my mother, the last thing she did was waste her life.
Mm,
But
percent.
what she didn't do was she didn't do the creative projects she dreamed about.
Mm,
And so I I've been really good about birthing my creative projects, in part because of her example, right? She died when I was 33, and that was a huge wake-up call. That was
yeah.
like, and at first I was angry. At first I looked at my husband, who at the time it had shifted. He was not as supportive of my dreams at that point. I'd been doing my dreams for a long time. And
Amen
and
to that.
And thank you. And there was some resistance that was happening. And I was like, mother effer,
Mhm.
like nothing will come between me and the things that are important to me. And that means somebody I love, if they're having a birthday party, I'm not missing it. If somebody I love is going through a rough time and I have to get on a plane and see them, even though we don't have money, I'm going. Like, I was
Yeah.
drawing boundaries all over the place at that point. But it really taught me that time is short
Mhm.
and we have to commit. And so I love committing for other people. It's easier for me than committing to myself. So I'm just forcing myself to commit to myself. And the minute I made the announcement, I made it a couple of weeks ago that I was going to be halting the retreats.
I saw that on
I was so empowered and so excited when I made the announcement. And then the next morning, I woke up and I started crying and I cried for like 3 days straight.
yeah.
Because when you do something for a long time and it becomes so much a part of your life, there is so many tentacles of feelings attached to that, right? And so I don't know who I am as
Mm.
an adult human being without being attached to Carmel. I don't know who I am without having this day job that keeps me incredibly busy with all these clients. And it's a little scary to find out, but I'm excited too.
Well, I think it's being on the precipice of a huge change and making that choice is, like you're describing, not easy. And I so inspired by your choice. Because,
Really?
yeah, because I mean, I think most entrepreneurs, when you sort of set into a role
Yeah.
and love it at the same time,
Wow.
but know that you have to create space for self
Yeah.
and yet are a giver, it is a very difficult choice
Yeah.
because
It
it
is.
leaves a hole. It's a grieving process.
Oh my God. And somebody said that to me. One of my clients reached out to me after she saw me announce it on social media. And she said, I'm so excited for you. I'm so proud of you. And are you okay? Because I know there's a lot of grief coming. And I was like, what is she talking about? And then the next day it hit. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That's what she was talking about.
Yes. And I think I'm inspired by it because I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through this where
Yeah.
we want to create something else, but we're trying to figure out how to create space for it. And I think I, in my own way, am trying to figure this out with writing the book, right? So there's
Oh,
so
I
much.
feel for you. I feel for you because when COVID happened, it was really interesting. I had talked to a psychic the month before, so like in November of before the pandemic. So the pandemic happened, I think, in the spring or late winter of what, 2020. So the year before I talked to this psychic, and I don't go to a lot of psychics because I feel like I'm pretty psychic for my own self.
Yeah, you
But
kind of know.
somebody gave me the gift, and I went to this woman, and she said, "Oh, you're not going to be doing your retreats next year." And I was
Wow.
like, yeah, cuckoo birds, lady.
Exactly.
No, I already had the hotel booked. It was full for the
Yeah.
following year, full. I was like, I'd paid for the hotel. I had the women already in. They had already paid. Like, okay, crazy person. And then the hotel closed and the world shut down and the people couldn't fly. Like people were coming from Europe. I had two gals coming from Europe. I had one gal coming from Canada. They couldn't come. I had a gal coming from Florida. They couldn't come. And I thought, oh, now what am I going to do? And
Mhm.
I thought, oh, I'm going to use the 40, 50 hours a week that I normally use on supporting my Carmel people. I'm going to tell everybody that I'm just taking a hiatus. We'll figure it out online soon. But right now, I'm going to write my book. And I
Wow.
have been working on this guy for 10 years. I don't know. Some of the stories in here had been so many years in the making because they were part of a memoir that I ended up not wanting to sell about my divorce. And had it not been for COVID shutting down my life, our lives, everybody's lives, I never would have finished the book. I was in total denial that I could finish it while having a full-time life. And it wasn't true. And not everybody's in that situation. Like a lot of books you can write quickly. A lot I used to ghostwrite books for people in 8 weeks or 12
Yeah,
weeks. But this
exactly.
was different. This was a memoir combined with advice from the best-selling authors in the world. And it was I'd never seen a book like that before. I didn't really know what it was yet. I was just kind of wading through, and I needed that deep, deep dive of peace and quiet.
Mm.
And I needed to try and experiment and fail. And I needed 50 hours a week.
Exactly. Do you ever feel that? So it's interesting because what that leads me into thought processes around patterns, right, and habits with people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think about like choices in my life, and I think about, why, for example, didn't I continue on to graduate school when I was working full time? Because to your point about like how you give 150, 200% toward a person or your projects, like I was like, I gave it all to my work. And then I was like, oh, but I don't really care that I didn't go to graduate school, but it's more like
Sure.
I'm giving
Sure.
this example,
Sure.
like, oh, I felt like I couldn't do both really well.
Right.
And so
Right.
then I think to myself, and when you work with people, what do you think works really well for them when they're starting to write a book? Do they need to carve
Mhm.
out time? It seems like everybody's so different.
Everybody's so different. I mean, when I was working on the memoir that I pulled a lot of these stories out of for beautiful writers because it was a divorce memoir. So when I was working on that, I had to do a super big deep dive for a concentrated amount of time. I would say for 6 months every morning I woke up at 4 a.m. and I wrote in my bed office until 7 a.m., which was as long as the dogs could wait. So I woke up, I had an apple, I had water by the bed. My husband at the time was doing a really big job at work and he had to leave at 4 a.m. So it was awesome.
It
It
was
was
like
like
perfect. You had your space.
he was gone. I had my space. I could sit in my bed office. My dogs were chill. Everything, the world was shut out, right? And I could dive into the painful, really gut-wrenching stuff that I needed to unearth for that memoir. And
Mhm.
but after 6 months, I had done it. I had purged it, I had done it, I had edited it ad nauseum. And then I could do more sort of middle of the day writing this, a half hour here, an hour here, 2 hours at night. It didn't really matter at that point because I didn't need the same deep dive of total
Okay.
concentration to like pull out my spleen through my nose, which is what that painful material required.
Exactly.
So it just kind of depends if you're working on self-help and maybe it's a three-step process that you have at your chiropractic business and you know your baby's face. Well, that doesn't require the same emotional and mental energy and the schedule can be very different. So it really depends not only on what you're working on, but the chapter you're working on,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
stories are really different depending on where you are in the story.
Yeah. What creates, in your opinion, a good writer? And I know it's subjective, so I'd like to say that, but like just like I always said, that I believe there's a writer in each one of us. Like, what do you believe makes a good writer?
I always say to people who I've worked with at my retreats, I don't actually care if you're a good writer.
I love that.
So you can come because what I care about is the passion for the idea.
Mm.
If you've got the passion, we'll find you a ghostwriter. We'll find you an editor. Most people use ghostwriters or editors anyway. That's the big secret in publishing. Most people aren't great writers. Everybody can get better. Everybody can tell a story because if you can talk, you can write a story. But there's craft in there. There's a lot of craft and there's a lot of years that it takes to be truly a beautiful storyteller. That takes time.
Mm.
But if you've got that passion for the idea and you're willing to assemble the resources and you're willing to do the legwork and you're willing to listen to people like me, whether it's in books or online or wherever, so that you know where you're headed, you know the lay of the land, you're not sort of in grandiosity. I mean, one of the reasons why I wrote Beautiful Writers was because I did everything the hard way. And it's fucking funny. And I wanted people to know like those stories and to see what works. But
Mm,
it was trial by error. As you know, everybody I interview on the podcast, from Cheryl Strayed to Liz Gilbert to Van Jones to Tom Hanks, they
yes.
all did it the hard way too. And
Mm,
we're all just swapping stories about like learn from us, and
yeah,
then it's not as hard for you.
exactly. Yeah, and I think so. Do you think people are their own worst enemies when they write?
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Always, because they think they can't do it, so they don't even start. Or they start and then they're too afraid to read it to anybody or to get anybody's feedback. So they just send it into publishing willy-nilly when it's like, holy crap, you're not ready. I mean, one of the best things you can do, hold your idea quiet in the beginning. It takes time. You've got to nurture it. You've got to really believe in it. But once you have written something, you've got to start sharing it. You've got to get feedback before you put it in the big leagues, right? And so yeah, I always love helping people do that process, how to get beta readers, how to get accountability buddies, how to find people who you feel safe with, but who are going to give you good feedback. You know, you don't want just yes people, you don't want people blowing smoke. You need
Exactly.
people to give you the real deal. But there are so many things you can do so that you make yourself a better writer, so that you stack the odds in your favor. So when you do put something out there, it's pro. But there's a
Exactly.
lot of stages between an idea and being pro.
Exactly. So I've had conversations with people, and I've had many authors on my podcast, but some of them write their book within like less than a year, like 9 months.
Right.
And I'm always super impressed by it and also terrified. And but yet am invigorated about the idea. How do you get a book done in 9 months?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I feel like now there's all these get published quick schemes,
Sure.
and
Sure.
false promises about if you become an author, then you're going to sell all these books.
Hmm.
But from what I understand, that's not really the truth.
It's not. And it's infuriating to people like me because we see people have their dreams dashed, and it's really painful. That's not to say I haven't seen people publish quickly. I had a gal, Molly Carmel, came to Carmel from New
Uh-huh.
York. She wrote a book called Breaking Up with Sugar. It
Mm-hmm.
was a huge deal in the trades, in the industry, very big deal. She came like in September and said, I want to have a book deal with Random House by January.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, probably not going to happen. I said, but if that's what you really want, because she was solid
Yeah,
in her
exactly.
desire. I
Mm-hmm.
said, if that's what you really want, then you have to delegate all of your work in New York, 'cause she had a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the steps you have to do. And I laid it all out. And sure as shit, she did exactly what I told her to do. And she had a monster deal by January. And Random
Amazing.
House is doing like cover photo shoots with her by February. I mean, it was like
Wow.
beyond fast. That is not the norm. That
Yeah.
is so not the norm.
I don't hear about that story very often.
And she was writing about what she knew, like
Mm-hmm.
divorcing for herself from sugar, breaking up with sugar was her business. So
Mm-hmm.
even though she hadn't written the book when we met in Carmel, she knew how to, it was almost like paint by numbers. She knew how to
Yes.
tell that story. She
Mm-hmm.
knew what her
She had lived it.
reader needed. She knew what their pain points were. She knew what the arc of the story. She had lived that story. She had lost over 100 pounds herself.
Wow.
So she was like the perfect spokesperson, and it could be very fast. Most people, it is years from idea to publication, years. And then, it might be 10 years. I would say a friend of mine, Janet Yang, is the head of the Academy of Arts and Sciences, and she's a producer and has won all the things, Academy Awards and everything. And she says the average movie that she's worked on in Hollywood has taken her 10 years.
Wow.
She did the Joy Luck Club. I mean, she's like, Oliver Stone's producing partner for the Joy Luck Club. 10 years. And I want to say that's mostly the case in publishing. Most people, if you talk Cheryl Strayed, it took her 10 years for a while to be done. Now, that's not the case all of the time, but it's the case a lot of the time.
Well,
Zibby Owens talks about her books taking 10 years. This took 10 years.
yeah, I love that you're setting realistic expectations. So it is, I literally just got off the phone with a colleague of mine just before getting on this call. And he was talking to me about this book that he's working on that he literally has worked less than 6 months on.
Yeah.
I am like, how are you doing that? And then I'm like, where is the reality point between,
Yeah.
I mean, the ideas that I have had that I've written many different versions of starts of them
Yeah.
have been around for 4 years at least. And
Yeah.
so, yes, I also understand that people get in their own way. Is that true?
Well, let's see. Hold on. Let me find it. Okay, so this book, I wrote this book with my son. It's called Generation Green.
Okay.
We wrote it in 12 weeks. We got a book deal in 2 days, and the book was due in 12 weeks, and we did it. And
Wow.
it's Simon and Schuster. So sometimes opportunities come to you and you're given a deadline and you have to crank it out. And sometimes it's awesome. It's still in print. I still get royalties on this book from 2008.
Wow.
So
And how old is your son now?
he and I wrote it at 17. He's 34.
Wow.
And guess what? It's a great book. I did it. We did it. It's a damn good book. I love that book. So it's not to say you can't do it, but I had been thinking about, I didn't know Simon Schuster was going to lose a title and offer me this book. I
Yeah.
did not know that. But I had been thinking about the issues in the book, even writing magazine articles on recycling and things. So I had been actively living the material, living green. My son and I lived in a solar house in New Mexico, off the grid. We like showered with a balloon under a tree. I mean, so I had lived
I love
green.
hearing this side of you.
My mother was green. I mean, my mother would like water our front yard with like old laundry water and like so I had lived the material so much of my life that when somebody gave me a deadline of 12 weeks, I could pound it out
Mm, mhm,
and it was good.
mm.
So it
Sounds like
happens
it was like an embodiment. Like
100%.
you were so embodied in the subject matter that it made it easy to just invest and it
Yeah,
fluidly flew out of you.
it flew out. And certain parts were not easy. The parts that were not easy was some of the research because this is a book on climate and science. And some of that research was really hard for me. I was kind of brain dead. I just found out my husband was cheating on me. I had another deadline for Hyperion with a book that became a New York Times bestseller that I wrote with a self-help guy at the same time. So here I am in the fetal position with the cheater husband,
Wow.
2 books due in 8 weeks. I mean, or 12 weeks. So nightmare scenario. So it wasn't easy, but on those pieces that I couldn't wrap my mind around on some of that research, I hired a research assistant to get me
Not
some of
bringing books for help.
I hired somebody to give me the facts that I
So
could
many
then
people don't look for help though. This
weave
is the
together.
thing. Beautiful.
Had to. I would have drowned. Yeah.
Yes. So, when you, for example, like it's so interesting to me when you're saying, I was going through a divorce or whatever, you just found out your husband was cheating on you. Some people get blocked during those times, and some people in crisis excel.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're one who excels in
Yeah,
those types
for
of
sure.
environments.
For sure.
Like
I
you
didn't know how I didn't know how people did it any other way. I remember thinking to myself when I found out he was cheating, I thought, okay, I've seen people, women, find that out and gain 25 pounds because they're so heartbroken. They're just reaching for comfort food. I've seen women do the opposite where they starve themselves and they become a shell physically of their former selves. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, how do I not do either one of those?
Yeah.
So I made sure that I got good nutrition. I wasn't really that hungry. I was pretty devastated, but I forced myself to eat.
Yes.
So I forced myself to have nutrition. I forced myself to not go off the deep end. I allowed myself to grieve intensely, but I did it quickly. I was like, okay, I have a chapter due at 3, and my son is borderline like suicidal right now, so he needs his mom. So I'm gonna get in the car and I'm gonna drive for 20 minutes because that's all I've got, and I'm gonna scream bloody murder. I'm gonna pull over where nobody can hear me. I'm gonna cry and scream, and I'm gonna get it out, and then I'm gonna go home and be a mom and be a worker. And
Yeah.
so I knew to grieve, but I had to schedule it, and I knew how to do it.
Mm. That's interesting that that came naturally for you because
Yeah.
most women would stuff it down.
Well, but I was a self-help author,
Oh,
and
okay.
and
There's the answer.
I was a psychology major. So one of the books I had written previously was called The Will to Survive, and it was written with a blind cop. He had been shot in the face by at a drug checkpoint. So he was blind, and he had gotten his PhD, and he was a counselor for cops and fire fire personnel who wanted to commit suicide. That was his deal. And so he taught me that you have to get it up and out or it gets a lot worse. The more you hold something in, it gets worse. And both my parents had died by that point. And
Mm.
I knew through the grieving process with them that it's you got to get it up and out. But
Yes.
you got to feel it. Otherwise, you pay now or pay later, right?
How to
And if
feel
you
it to
pay
heal
later,
it.
it could be a lot worse.
Exactly. If we don't feel it, we don't heal it, as we
There
know.
you go. There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah. So it's again, you're one who actually it's almost like the map appears like as you take action.
I think so.
It's a very interesting it's a very interesting way to approach life. And
Mm.
it's like an experiential learner
Oh,
is the way
wow.
that I am witnessing it
Wow.
and wondering because as you described that you weren't an academic, it wasn't something that
Right. Right.
gravitated toward, but then yet you've had such success attached to being passionate
Right.
about the map that comes in front of you. Like it's like
Totally.
that step
Totally.
like unveils.
Totally. I always assume that if I'm in a situation, it's for my highest good,
Mhm.
and that I've been given this situation because I will rock it. I just assume that. And I don't know. And it's probably really grandiosity. It's probably naivete, but it keeps proving to work.
Well, it sounds like you're really flowing and like surrendering to the
I
process.
try. I try. And
And
my
what
life has
a
been
blessing.
actually really hard in a lot of ways. Like, I lost my parents pretty young. My husband was, he left, and my son had a really, really tough time with all of that. So I would say that I think when you've had a lot of hits in life, you better learn how to flow, or it's just too hard.
But you could do the opposite. And we see many people choose the
Wow.
opposite.
I just think that would be harder.
hmm Well, because uh, it's like what do we learn about salmon, right? The way that they go upstream and the
Yeah.
way that they just learned differently, and in which case it continues to open for them.
Yeah.
Similarly with you, like life continues to open for you because you remain open. Here we go. Like
Oh,
so interesting.
that's pretty cool. Thank you for that. That's that's nice. That's hopeful.
Well, thank you. I only name what I see, right?
Yeah.
And it's just something that for me, as I continue to listen, I become more deeply inspired by you because it's not about your accolades. It's actually about who you are
Oh,
and like
thank you.
how you operate in the world. Because most people have a system, they work out their system, and that is the way things get done. But what you're saying is There's not one way.
There's infinite systems,
I love this.
infinite systems.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautifully
Yeah.
said. Beautifully said. So, what do you do when somebody has a writer's block? Because many people get them.
I mean, there's the one thing that Seth Godin told me on my podcast that I think I've excerpted in the book, which is nobody really has talker's block.
Mhm.
So if you have writer's block, just start talking. And I really encourage my people to talk into their voice memos on their
I do that all
phone,
the time.
right? It's so
Yes.
helpful. It's
And
like,
it's empowering.
yeah, you just get to the I always say a little prayer too. I'm always like, okay, all right, God, and you could talk to your muse. It doesn't matter what you call it, but just like, what do you want to say through me? And so you take it, it's not about you. It's not about you and your fears and your lack of credentials or your over credentials or whatever the rules are that you've got in your head. It's not about any of that. It's about what is wanting to be birthed through you. So if you kind of take yourself out of it, that takes the pressure off. And then you just listen. So
Mhm.
sometimes I'll just open up a voice memo and I'll just start talking. But if I have nothing to say, I'll just sit there quietly
Mhm.
until I have something to say.
Mhm.
And it's as if by turning it on, the muse goes, oh, she's here. All right, now we'll take her seriously and we'll give her the idea. And I say the same thing about signing up for, I used to say it, about signing up for my retreats.
Mhm.
Now that I'm not offering them, I mean, there is a wait
I have
list,
two
so we'll
spots left.
see. What?
I think you still have two spots left.
Oh my
So
God, you're hilarious. Um,
one of them might be for me. I'm
that
still trying to figure that out.
would be amazing. But whether it's a retreat or you're thinking about going with somebody else or getting a friend and getting in a Airbnb and just doing your own writing retreat. I mean, I have a blog post somewhere on Book Mama, and you can do a Google search, Going Dark to Write,
Mm,
about how to create your own writing retreat. And I think it's one of the best things I've ever written. So go find that.
I'm going to.
But what my point is, when you stick something on the calendar, it's as if your higher self, your God, your muse goes, aha,
It's
okay, now she's showing up, so will we. And the ideas get way clearer, way faster.
I so agree with you. And I have my coaching clients, I always recommend it, but I still, even though everything's in my phone, this is how I keep it real, is with
Yeah.
a real calendar and literally put it in. Because if it's not in, exactly. See, we're
This
like
sucker, I
swimming.
live and die by this written stuff. I put the appointments on my calendar for sure.
Yes, me too. Well, yes, I
I
mean,
like to write it out every day, and then I take my highlighter and I cross off all day long.
don't you love that? See, like
Ah,
I still love a red pen and I cross off every day like I'm accomplishing it.
no, it's the best.
Well, it's gratifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes us feel like we're moving forward.
Yeah. And then because I have it in the big book,
Yes.
then you can go back and see what you didn't yet finish. And you're like, what's that thing I meant to do? And it's all there. And you know who taught me that?
Mm.
It was like 1989, and my first book had just come out, and Tony Robbins wanted to be in book two. So I interviewed Tony Robbins. I never published book two, but it was a really great interview. And I was with his executive assistant one day.
Mm.
And I said to her, how do you keep his life straight? And she
Um,
said, and she showed me the book. And every day you write a new day and it's all still there. Like 6 months goes in a book.
totally.
So you never forget anything. It's all still there.
Yeah, I mean, I use it also every day. I wake up with intention, so it comes from my subconscious. So I
Yeah.
actually write my intention for the day in the book.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I too am that agree with you that what creates drive. My word for the rest of the year, I have words for the year, but this word for the rest of the year that I gave my membership was momentum. And
Oh, good.
I feel like forward motion is what creates success. And I mean, you're clearly a big success. So
Oh, thank you. The other book I have, here, I'll show you that one. So this one that I also write in every day.
Mm, I
It's
love that.
gratitudes.
Oh, yeah, I love
Every morning,
that.
every night.
Beautiful. I feel that way. Yeah. I start with an intention and end with gratitude, but
Yeah, there you go.
I feel that way. So, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Know that we are eternally connected. And
Yeah.
what do you think allows you to be connected to all people?
I love people.
Mm,
I love people. I just love them. And it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they love Trump and it doesn't matter if they hate Trump.
mhm.
I still can find something to love about that person.
I
And
agree.
I think it helps. I was raised with a Republican father and a Democrat mother,
Mm,
radically different in their political leanings. And the only fight I ever saw them have, because they were very in love,
mm.
the only fight I ever saw them have as a kid was over McGovern and who was it? The caucus or something. Anyway,
Dukakis, Governor Dukakis.
so my mother took a wine glass and smashed it on his head, and
Oh
they
my
laughed.
God.
They laughed, and but then they decided never again. Never ever were they ever going to talk politics, and they did not.
Mm,
And I just I learned through that everybody, most everybody, I mean, unless it's somebody who's truly evil, everybody I meet, I always assume they want the best for themselves, their family, and everybody else. And how they're getting to that is very varied, right? And
yes,
it's all dependent on so many different things, what they're listening to, what their life experiences have been, what they've been told. I mean, on and on. The algorithms.
totally.
Um, I mean, Van Jones said it best the other day when he said, the things they're watching with happy music are the things you're watching with scary music. Everybody's getting a different viewpoint, right? And so I don't hate.
Mm. Wow, another place that we are aligned. I swear, it's always so kind of interesting to me who I attract.
Yeah.
Um, we're
I
mirrors.
just don't hate. So I care about everyone. And I think that's what makes my life work.
Mm. Yeah, the word I'm hearing is yeah, beyond heart. It's like we talk about openness and heart, but it's actually like you love so deeply.
I do.
It's really
I do.
beautiful. Really beautiful. So I just have a few more questions. The
Yeah.
first of which is if somebody has a writer in them, which we know they do, like where do they get started beyond calling you?
I think you have to know what your block is. So I would say you got to write. You got to write as much as you can, but that's not every day for everybody. Sometimes it's just a Saturday. So if you need to trade something with the husband, like you take the kids, I'm going to Starbucks for half a Saturday, or a neighbor or a friend, or
Mm,
if it's 15 minutes every morning before work, whatever it is, you got to start writing because it's really easy to be in that limbo area where all you're doing is researching writing or
mhm.
dreaming about writing or listening to interviews about writing. But it's another thing to sit down and actually do
Actually,
it.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say first and foremost, just start and put it on the calendar and don't expect to be good at it. Just be okay with the messy stuff of it.
Mm,
And you'll get better all the time. So I would say that's just the most obvious thing. Just start.
mm. Well, I love that because it simplifies it. And again, it gives permission.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. And then my last question is, what are your top five core values and how do you use them every day in your life?
Oh my gosh. Enthusiasm. That just comes naturally. I love I love to do whatever I'm doing. So
Mm,
if I'm mucking the horse manure, I'm loving it. If I'm walking the dogs, I'm loving it. If I'm cleaning the floors, I'm loving it.
mm,
If I'm writing, I'm loving it. So yeah, enthusiasm. Top five. Um, Honesty, not truth, because I think truth is super subjective,
I
but
agree.
just honesty, being honest with people, being honest with yourself, which can be even harder than being honest with others. So enthusiasm, honesty, Commitment,
Mm.
showing up. Um, I want to say talent, but I don't know what I mean by that. What do I mean by that?
Expertise.
Yeah, I like to be good at what I'm doing. And back to I'm just really good at anything I do. So like if I'm cleaning the floor, my floors look fucking great.
You know the word I
If
hear?
I'm mucking the horse stall, like my horses are well cared for. What
It's
did you
really
say?
more integrity.
Maybe that's it. Okay, integrity, core values,
You just said one.
humor,
Huh?
humor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like even in my divorce, my friends were like, "Oh my God, you still laugh about I still laugh every day, no matter
I
what."
love that. I love
Yeah. Even when my parents were dying, I mean, I grieve like a mother, but I always see a sense of humor in everything.
Mm. Well, we're kind of all things if we allow it, you
Yeah.
know? We're
Yeah.
if we allow all the emotions, we are all of it. But some people shut certain parts of themselves off. But
Yeah.
yeah. Any other word?
Love.
Yes. Come on.
Yeah.
Love, heart.
Love. Love. Yeah.
Yes. Amazing. Well, I just want to really thank you for your time and thank you for making people believe that things are possible and helping ignite their dreams
Mm.
and seeing people.
Thank you for seeing me. This was just incredibly surprising. I feel very seen as well. It was very incredibly enjoyable. Thank you.
Of course, of course. I think the thing about when I interview people is that it is a coaching interview, but people don't get it until I actually
Yeah,
interview them. And then they're like, this is not what I expected at all. Like,
totally.
so
Totally.
I appreciate your honesty and your transparency and showing up.
Thank you, babe.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah. So is there anything you want to leave people with before you get off, like where they could reach you or anything like that?
Bookmama.com, BMAMA, bookmama.com, and just trust yourself. If you
Mm,
have the ache, you have what it takes.
I like that.
That's it.
I'll remind myself of that. Okay. I love you and we will
Love
chat
you too.
soon.
Thank you, sweetie. So fun.